Are you familiar with eminent domain? Do you know where that's authorized in the Constitution of the United States? Do you know the requirements and limitations of eminent domain? A recent case out of the Supreme Court shows just how dangerous it is for we the people not to know what the Constitution says. According to this court, not only does Congress have the authority to use eminent domain, but to authorize private companies to use that power for their own private gain. Sadly, not only the courts, but most Americans believe it's legal. So we'll discuss that next on the Constitution Study.
You have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Welcome to the Constitution Study. Paul Engel here. I'm glad you could join me. As always, I like to point you over to the website, constitutionstudy.com, that you can find out everything I'm doing. You can find the article related to this video. You can find other articles and videos and audio related to constitutional issues of our day. I also want to point you to Constitution Scholars, where you can meet up with other constitutional people to read and to study and to learn from each other. But I'll go into more detail about that at the end of the program. Most of all, I want to thank those of you who helped support me on my Knowing Your Rights tour. I'm just back from my first leg of the tour. I'll have some stories that I'll talk about in future episodes, but I had a great time. And if you are able to support me, I appreciate that greatly. If I met you, I'm glad I did. And if you want to find out more, just go to constitutionstudy.com/tour. See if I'm going to be coming to a location near you. But with that, let's talk about this eminent domain case. First, we need to acknowledge that eminent domain is a legitimate power of government. Now, eminent domain is defined as the power to take private property for public use by a state, municipality, or private person or corporation authorized to exercise functions of public character, following the payment of just compensation to the owner of that property. It's just as important to know the limitations on this power established within the Constitution of the United States. These limitations are apparently lost on both Congress and the courts. From the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, quote, "Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." With this in mind, let's take a closer look at the problems with the case Penny's Pipeline versus New Jersey. Quote, "Congress passed the Natural Gas Act in 1938 to regulate the transportation and sale of natural gas in interstate commerce. To build an interstate pipeline, a natural gas company must obtain from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission a certificate reflecting that such construction is or will be required by the present or future public convenience and necessity." That's from 15 U.S.C. section 717 F.E. We start with an act of Congress, the Natural Gas Act, passed in 1938. In its very first sentence, the court has already made a mistake. Congress has the authorization to regulate interstate commerce, not interstate transportation. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the Constitution grants to Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. This problem is only a tiny semantic difficulty in this case. 15 U.S.C. 717 F.C. does state that the Commission may issue a certificate of public convenience and necessity to a natural gas company for the transportation in interstate commerce of natural gas used by any person for one or more high priority uses as defined by rule by the Commission in the case of A, natural gas sold by the producer to such person, and B, natural gas produced by such person. That sounds good so far, right? The commission set up by Congress may issue certificates of public convenience and necessity to those who wish to sell natural gas across state lines. That, however, is not the entire law. See, Section 717A states, "As disclosed in reports of the Federal Trade Commission made pursuant to Senate Resolution 83, 70th Congress, First Session, and other reports made pursuant to the authority of Congress, it is declared that the business of transporting and selling natural gas for ultimate distribution to the public is affected with a public interest, and that the federal regulation in matters relating to the transportation of natural gas and the sale of in interstate and foreign commerce is necessary in the public interest." See, Congress simply declared that transporting and selling natural gas to the public is a public interest, and therefore interstate and foreign commerce. See, in other words, Congress effectively declared that any public interest was suddenly interstate commerce, regardless if it crossed state or national borders. Suddenly, Congress claimed the authority to regulate whatever they considered a public interest. While this case does involve interstate commerce, we should recognize that the law this court is using is already unconstitutional, illegal, and void. Now back to the court's opinion. As originally enacted, the NGA did not provide a mechanism for certificate holders to secure property rights necessary to build pipelines, often leaving certificate holders with only an illusory right to build. The court notes that in the original NGA, there was no mechanism for certificate holders to secure property rights. It appears that to the court this was a mistake, an oversight, while in fact it was not only the law, it was the supreme law of the land. As I've already quoted, the Fifth Amendment allows private property to be taken only for public use. Yet Congress later claimed the authority not only to take private property for private use, but to authorize private entities to do so for it. In other words, the 1938 Natural Gas Act did not grant the power to secure property rights because the Constitution did not delegate that power to Congress. According to the court, Congress remedied this defect in 1947 by amending the NGA to authorize certificate holders to exercise the federal eminent domain power, thereby ensuring that certificates of public convenience and necessity could be given effect. Nowhere in the Constitution is the United States authorized to exercise eminent domain to transfer property from one private entity to another. What this court refers to as a defect is called the supreme law of the land. Furthermore, the Constitution does not authorize the United States to delegate its eminent domain power to someone else. Yet Congress simply spoke into existence this terrible power. Again, from the opinion, when any holder of a certificate of public convenience and necessity cannot acquire by contract or is unable to agree with the owner of the property to the compensation to be paid, the necessary right-of-way to construct, operate, and maintain a pipeline or pipelines for the transportation of natural gas, and the necessary land or other property, in addition to right-of-way for the location of compressor stations, pressure apparatus, or other stations or equipment necessary to the proper operation of such pipeline or pipelines, it may acquire the same by the exercise of the right of eminent domain in the District Court of the United States for the district in which such property may be located, or in the state courts. See, Congress simply decided that they had the power to do whatever they think is necessary. This is not only a violation of the 10th Amendment, but the very structure of our republic. The 10th Amendment reads, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people." If we had a properly functioning judicial system, one that placed the language of the Constitution as the supreme law of the land and was dedicated to opining justly in all its cases, well, this law would have been recognized as unconstitutional decades ago. Instead, this law has not only been allowed to stand, multiple courts have ignored their oaths to support the Constitution and allowed Congress to effectively rewrite it for their benefit. So much for checks and balances. Now, in their tradition of holding previous opinions above the Constitution, this court conveniently skips over the constitutional problems, then goes on further to destroy property rights in America. As relevant here, Penn East sought to condemn parcels of land in which either New Jersey or the New Jersey Conservation Foundation asserts a property interest. Notice a couple of very interesting points here. Two groups, both the state of New Jersey and the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, assert a property interest. These entities don't simply have property interests, they have property rights. The very same Fifth Amendment that Congress uses as their authority for eminent domain states, "No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law." Now, some of you may say, "Wait, Paul, these aren't people. It's a state and an organization." But who controls the state of New Jersey? Who ultimately owns whatever is owned by the state of New Jersey? Don't we call it public land? Yes, the land of the state of New Jersey is public land, but does that give Congress the authority to take land from a state? No, it does not. And who owns the New Jersey Conservation Foundation? Who controls it? Isn't it the people who ultimately own these properties? And since this land is not being taken for public use, this is not a Fifth Amendment takings. What this is government-sanctioned theft, with the blessing of the very same judicial branch that was created to protect our rights, including our right to property. Now, the court held Section 17FH authorizes FERC certificate holders to condemn all necessary rights of way, whether owned by private parties or states. Section 717FH of the Natural Gas Act is unconstitutional and therefore illegal and void. But this court simply ignores that inconvenient fact to get this opinion. Now, the preamble of the Constitution to the United States tells us, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." It is unfortunate, but what we have here is almost the exact opposite. We have a union that is being corrupted, justice that only exists for those who can pay for it. States are being pitted against each other. Those who are to defend us are being used to persecute us, and the welfare of the powerful few is placed above the general population. Worst of all, the blessings of liberty are being ground under the foot of an ever more tyrannical government. This case is just the latest example of the failure of expecting those in government to act as a check and balance against each other. And every time states allow themselves and their citizens to be treated as subject of the federal government, freedom and liberty in America die just that much more. This is why John Jay said, "Every member of the state ought diligently to read and to study the Constitution of his country and teach the rising generation to be free. By knowing their rights, they'll sooner perceive when they are violated and be the better prepared to defend and assert them." Because the American people are generally ignorant of their Constitution, their rights are being violated and they don't even know it. Because we expected the government to teach the rising generation to be free rather than doing it ourselves, the idea of freedom and liberty has become anathema to this generation. Because of our ignorance, we don't know how to defend and assert our rights. Also, because of this ignorance, all branches of governments at all levels are well on their way to converting the United States of America from the land of the free to the land of the subjected. The fact that we are letting this happen proves that we are no longer the home of the brave, but the home of cowards. The only reason for hope is that there is still a small glowing ember of the sacred fire of liberty. The question is, will the people of New Jersey, with the help of patriots across the nation, help fan that ember of liberty? Or will it be crushed by those who pervert the Constitution? This is not the first time the Supreme Court has allowed eminent domain to be used to steal private property to give it to other private entities. Anybody remember the Kelo decision? However, it is the latest one, and it's again based on a law that is unconstitutional because Congress granted itself powers it does not have according to the Constitution. But again, through our ignorance, we the people have allowed this to happen. We have done nothing to correct these. We sit back and think, well, what can you do? Well, the answer is you grow up. You learn to be a citizen. You learn what your rights are, and then you learn how to stand for them. How to stand your ground. How to tell Congress, no, you're not allowed to do this. We will fire you if you continue to misrepresent the authority we have given you. We will fire you if that means that we will simply not elect you the next time, if it means we will impeach you, if it means we will call for investigations against you, to have you removed from Congress. All those are legal and constitutional remedies to the mess we have right now. But it starts with you, the American citizen, knowing your rights, knowing the role of government, knowing the limitations of government, and knowing your authority and your power because you're a citizen of this great country. Now, I forget who was it said it that, this method of government is the worst there is except for all the others. America is still one of the freest places in the world, but sadly that's quickly changing. And it's changing because we allow this tyranny to go on. The question is, what will you do? Now, if you want to find out more, go to constitutionstudy.com, find other articles and examples and information to help you stand for your rights. Help you teach yourself, your family, your neighbors. Maybe put on your own Constitution study. Get a group of people together that join once a week or every couple of weeks to read and study the Constitution. That's step one. The next thing I'd ask you to do is check out constitutionscholars.com. I set up Scholars for a couple of reasons. One of them primary is it's a place where constitutional Constitutionally minded Americans can meet, they can find each other, they can discuss, they can debate without worried about being censored because their ideas are uncomfortable. About the only thing I don't allow on the site are profanity and threats. You can have a heated verbal discussion as long as you don't resort to profanity and as long as you don't threaten to harm someone. But it's a place we can all gather. We can find each other. You may find you have a neighbor that's just as interested in the Constitution as you are, and you can do it absolutely free. So go to constitutionscholars.com, register for your free account. You'll also get access to some of my books, a library of some of my videos. I have a research library where I'm putting in the different resources I use when I study. These are all tools to help people get started, and I'm trying to build a bit more activity so that we can get together online maybe and have an open Q&A. Who knows? Make a suggestion. When you're there, do me a favor. There are several community groups you can join. That's how we find each other. Now, there's one for the United States that covers a federal constitution, but there's one for your state. Each of the 50 states has one. Join that as well and join that conversation. Be involved in what's going on in your state as well. You see, John Jay said, every member of the state ought diligently to read and study the Constitution for a reason. If you want to know what your rights are, if you want to be able to recognize when they're being violated, to defend and assert them, it starts with that. Now, if you can support the work that I'm doing, I would appreciate that greatly. You can find out more at constitutionstudy.com/donations, or you can simply sign up for one of my mentoring memberships. On the Scholars Program, I have different mentoring memberships to help mentor you into becoming a better Constitution scholar. You can find it all there. And if you have any questions, either about the sites or just Constitution in general, you can ask them, either on the Scholars page or on the study page. It's all about interaction. It's all about education. It's all about being an educated citizen. So please check all those out. Share this video, share the podcast, share the article, share this information with friends and family. And then come back here and join me next time for the Constitution Study.